Today I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to go about replacing these old windows, and you might ask, well, what's wrong with them? The answer is a lot. The seals are busted, so the glass fogs up, which means that they don't retain any real R value anymore, so the insulation value is shot. The paint's flaking, the wood's rotting. There's all sorts of problems. So I'm going to be replacing them with these beautiful single-hung vinyl windows from Simonton Windows, who's gracious enough to sponsor this video. And that might lead you to the question of, why vinyl? Well, I'm going to answer that as I start to take apart these windows. For one, vinyl windows are typically the most cost-effective solution for replacing windows, and they're relatively low maintenance, and they don't require being repainted every couple years like the previous wood ones that I'm pulling out of here. Not only that, but these Simonton windows actually have a limited lifetime warranty, which can be transferred in the event that you sell your house to a new owner. Now, these are what are considered casement windows, which means that they're a single pane and they're hinged on one side, so they swing open. And I'm going to be replacing them with a single hung option, which means that the bottom sash is able to move up and down. The top part will stay in place. That's the difference between a single hung and a double hung. And these windows are cased out with a brick mold, which I'm not crazy about. And so I'm tearing off this brick mold. And this is going to be a little bit of a non-traditional install for replacement windows, because in most cases, you don't really have to remove the casing. That's the benefit of a replacement window over a new construction window. Now, when I measured these windows, my plan was to leave the jambs in place and just remove the actual glass in the casement. But as I was taking things apart, the jambs were hardly secured and they weren't really conducive to supporting these replacement windows. So I decided to remove the whole jamb, which then left me with a problem. The windows were slightly smaller than the rough opening, but just because you make a little bit of a mistake on the front end doesn't mean that you can't fix it. So to fix it, I'm framing in the rough opening to be a little bit smaller. So here's how I fixed the jamb. Now, as you can see, I've just basically made it a little bit smaller. But if you pay attention, I've made sure that it's flush here with the existing siding. And what my plan is now is to waterproof it using flashing tape. The flashing tape will make everything kind of nice and waterproof and cohesive. And then I can install these windows like a new construction window with the nailing flange, put everything in place. And one of the nice things about working with Simonton is that when I had these windows made, I asked for them to add the nailing flange, which you would typically find in a new construction window, because I knew I was going to be replacing the casing around the window anyway. So working with them allows you to kind of customize your option. Not only that, but I was also able to have the exterior of the windows a different color than the interior of the windows, because I know that I'm going to be repainting the exterior of the house and I wanted the inside of the windows white. So these windows came ready to go. I don't have to do any painting of the vinyl itself. So I just used some premium elastomeric sealant around the top and the sides of the windows and leave the bottom open, because if any water does manage to get back there, you always want to make sure that at each level of the window installation, you leave the ability for the water to get out. And I'll show you kind of how I continue that moving forward. So I just set the window in place, make sure that everything's level and plumb, and then I can just nail it off using the nailing flange. And then I'm adding a second layer of flashing tape over the nailing flange, connecting everything together and adding an extra layer of waterproofing. And then from there, I can move on to casing the windows out. And I'm using LP Smart Side, kind of a flat stock casing for this. It's nothing fancy. Their website calls for using shims to flatten out the trim board because the nailing flange causes it to kind of rock. But I feel like that leaves a little bit too big of a gap to fill. So what I found was that if I actually ran it on the table saw and just took a little chunk out of the trim board, it sat better on the wall, and then you didn't have a big gap that you had to caulk later. So I just nailed off the trim boards with some hot dipped galvanized nails, and once everything was in place, then pretty much last step was just getting everything sealed up and ready for paint. So I caulked all along the edge of the window frame where it meets the trim board, and along the bottom of the window, I left a small little hole, again, so that if any water does get in there, it has an area to escape so that the water doesn't build up behind your casing and rot it out over time or cause a mold problem. And then I used some exterior paintable caulking to caulk where the trim and the wall meet. And lastly, just patched up all the holes and got to painting. Another benefit of these vinyl replacement windows is that they're really energy efficient. They're argon filled and designed specifically for northern climates. This is my son's playroom on the other side, and it's kind of a sunroom, but in the winter months it gets particularly cold, mostly because those previous windows were so drafty. In fact, vinyl windows can outperform wood and aluminum windows, which means they can save you money on your energy bill and keep things nice and comfortable inside. And speaking of the inside, I'm sure some of you are thinking, okay, well, you changed everything, so what does that do to the inside? I'll show you. On the inside, I'm just building out some new jam boxes. And then I get everything set and tacked in place, and then I can just trim it out, just like I would a normal window. And then what I'm left with is a beautiful new window installed both inside and outside. So here they are, the finished windows all installed. Everything's painted and we're good to go. I'd like to say thank you to Simonton Windows and Doors for sponsoring this video, and to Lansing Building Products in Denver for helping with the fulfillment. Check out Simonton's full range of windows and doors on their website at simonton.com, and why vinyl replacement windows might be right for your home by clicking the link in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.